Everybody remembers the theme song of Full House. Almost nobody knows what happened after the cameras stopped. One cast member was blacked out behind the wheel at 51, and the first line of his memoir came from strangers screaming at him in the street. Another was fighting 2 separate cancers in 15 months. Another was lying to her own husband, a police officer, for years. And when the family came back together for one final season, 2 of them were missing. And the reason still divides fans today. The show was called Full House. The truth was something else entirely. Bob Saget. The strangest thing about Bob Saget was how completely he split into 2 public selves. To most of America, he felt safe. He felt familiar. He was the kind of man people trusted without thinking twice. Yet on stage, he had one of the dirtiest stand-up acts in comedy. That contrast followed him for most of his career. From 1987 to 1995, he played Danny Tanner, the widowed and overly neat TV dad on Full House, raising 3 girls in San Francisco with endless hugs and gentle advice. At the same time, from 1989 to 1997, he hosted America's Funniest Home Videos. For years, that meant Bob Saget was showing up on network television almost every night, carrying an image of warmth, decency, and total reliability. Later, he voiced the older Ted Mosby on How I Met Your Mother. Then he returned as Danny Tanner again for all 5 seasons of Fuller House. Still, the man behind that image was very different. In comedy circles, Saget was known as a comics comic, fearless, sharp, and wildly filthy. His material was so outrageously explicit that Comedy Central built an entire roast around that side of him in 2008. Over time, the distance between wholesome Bob Saget and stand-up Bob Saget became part of the act itself. He understood the tension, and he used it brilliantly. By the end of his life, he was still touring. His final tour was called I Don't Do Negative. That was the tour he was performing when he died. What followed made an already painful loss even harder to take. 2 Orange County Sheriff's deputies were later disciplined for leaking news of his death before his family had been told. One of them texted Saget's brother, who then posted R.I.P. Bob Saget on Twitter before deleting it. Another deputy, who was off duty, texted 2 neighbors who had just attended one of Saget's shows. Because of that, the news spread fast. Reporters began flooding the family with questions, while his wife and daughters still had no idea what had happened. Later, the toxicology report ruled out illicit drugs and alcohol. It did show that Saget had tested positive for COVID-19, though he had already spoken publicly about having it in December, and PCR tests can remain positive for weeks after infection. The report also noted prescribed clonazepam and trazodone in his system, along with an enlarged heart, and one side that was 95% blocked. As the investigation moved forward, his family filed a lawsuit to keep certain records sealed. In the end, they won a permanent injunction. He is survived by his wife, Kelly Rizzo, and his 3 daughters, Aubrey, Jennifer Bell, and Lara Melanie. In the days after his death, one statement stayed with people more than most. His Full House family said that 35 years earlier, they had come together as a TV family, but over time, they had become a real one. Now, they said, they were grieving together as one family. John Stamos. The opening line of John Stamos's 2023 memoir did not come from his own pen. It came from strangers yelling at him from the street. On June 12, 2015, Stamos was 51 and driving through Beverly Hills when whatever he had taken or drunk earlier finally caught up with him. Tourists recognized him and shouted at him to stop the car. Their words became the first line of If You Would Have Told Me. Hey, Uncle Jesse, pull over, you're fed up. Someone called 911. When police arrived, they found him blacked out in the driver's seat. Looking back, Stamos did not soften what happened. He wrote that watching the TMZ footage made him sick. He saw a man moving through the streets completely out of control, and what haunted him most was how much damage he could have done. In his own words, he could have killed a child, destroyed a family, or taken the life of someone simply driving home. More than anything, he felt he had betrayed the person his parents raised, someone he believed was worth liking. Then, the memoir goes even deeper. Stamos admitted that while he was driving, part of him felt it might be fine if he died. In that moment, he believed he had already lived the life he once wanted. He had fame, he had women, he had a hit sitcom, he had even gotten to play with the Beach Boys. That despair did not come out of nowhere. His father was gone. His marriage to Rebecca Romaine, which lasted from 1998 to 2005, had fallen apart, along with his hopes of building a family. Then, only 9 months before the DUI, his mother Loretta died. He wrote that she had been the person who kept him steady for most of his life. Once she was gone, he started drifting. That is also where the story loops back to Full House. On the night of the DUI, Stamos had actually been on his way to meet Bob Saget. Instead, he woke up in a hospital room and found Saget sitting beside his bed. Stamos later said, "There was no judgment in that room, only love and concern." While he was missing, Saget and Stamos's two sisters had spent the whole night trying to find him. A month later, Stamos entered rehab. In October, he was charged. Years after that, he would describe Saget as the closest thing to the brother I always wanted. Then, 7 years later, Saget was gone. The memoir also revealed something much more painful from Stamos's past. In October 2023, he shared that he had been sexually abused as a child by a babysitter when he was around 10 or 11 years old. The memory surfaced much later, in 2018, while he was writing a speech for a Lifetime Achievement Award from Child Help. He had worked with the child abuse prevention charity for more than 20 years and had never fully understood why the cause reached him so deeply. The book also includes a much lighter detail that still feels almost unbelievable. Early in Full House, Stamos became so frustrated with the Olsen twins that he tried to get them fired. He even gave producers an ultimatum saying, "It's either me or them," because he believed the babies would hurt the show and damage his career. He pushed for other infants to be brought in. Eventually, though, he realized Mary-Kate and Ashley were exactly right for the part. That story only gets wilder with time. Those same twins grew up to become massively successful, each with an estimated fortune of around $250 million, which is more than double Stamos's own net worth. There is another detail in the memoir that changes how fans may look at Jesse and Becky. Long before they played one of television's most loved couples, John Stamos and Lorie Laughlin had gone on a date at Disneyland. According to him, they kissed in the haunted mansion. Laughlin, he says, does not remember it at all. Still, when she later walked into the chemistry read for Full House, that old memory came rushing back to him. He wrote that it sparked something instantly, and from there, the dialogue between them felt natural from the start. The rest of Stamos's life can look, from the outside, like a list of everything a person could want. He asked producers to change Uncle Jesse's last name to Katsopoulos to honor his Greek roots, since his family name had originally been Stamatopoulos. He played with the Beach Boys for 40 years as an honorary member. He built a long career through ER, General Hospital, Broadway, and grandfathered. By any normal measure, that is a remarkable life. Yet his own understanding of success was always tied to something more personal. After the memoir came out, he told Willie Geist that he had achieved the things people dream about. He got the show. He got the attention. He got to live out one fantasy after another. Still, for a long time, the family he wanted most had not happened. Eventually, that changed. Stamos married Caitlin McHugh in 2018, and he became a father at 54. Lorie Laughlin. For many people, the hardest part of Lorie Laughlin's story was how impossible it sounded at first. Aunt Becky going to prison felt like something the mind rejected before it could fully process it. Then the facts came out, and the truth was even worse than the headline. In March 2019, federal prosecutors in Massachusetts revealed Operation Varsity Blues, a massive admissions scandal built around wealthy parents buying unfair access to elite colleges for their children. At first, 50 people were arrested. Later, that number grew to 57 charged. Laughlin and her husband, fashion designer Massimo Giannulli, admitted that they paid $500,000 to the mastermind of the scheme, William Rick Singer, through his Key Worldwide Foundation. The goal was to falsely present their daughters, Olivia Jade and Isabella Rose, as recruits for the crew team at the University of Southern California. The fraud was striking because the basic facts were so easy to understand. Neither daughter rode. Neither had ever rowed. Even so, the couple went as far as posing their own children on rowing machines so the images could be used in the admissions process. In May 2020, Laughlin pleaded guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire and mail fraud. A few months later, on August 21, 2020, Judge Nathaniel Gorton sentenced her to 2 months in prison, a $150,000 $1,000 fine, 100 hours of community service, and 2 years of supervised release. Giannulli received 5 months, a $250,000 fine, and 250 hours of community service. When Laughlin addressed the court, her words were direct. She said, "I made an awful decision." She admitted that she had joined a plan that gave her daughters an unfair advantage. She said she had ignored her own instincts and stepped away from her moral compass. She also spoke about faith and redemption, clearly hoping the court would see remorse in what she said. Then came the prison term itself. On October 30th, 2020, she surrendered to the Federal Correctional Institution in Dublin, California. She reported almost 3 weeks early. It was the same prison where Felicity Huffman had already served 11 days. Laughlin was assigned Bureau of Prisons number 77827 I-12. Because of COVID restrictions, she was not allowed visitors. She was tested, quarantined, and began serving her sentence. Since federal sentences under 1 year do not qualify for good behavior credit, she served the full term. On December 28th, 2020, she was released. By then, the damage to her career was already severe. Hallmark fired her from When Calls the Heart as soon as the scandal broke and ended all development deals with her. Her character was written out after 6 seasons through a storyline about caring for a sick relative. Then came the sharpest public message of all. Laughlin had returned as Aunt Becky in Fuller House, but she was not invited back for the 5th and final season. The final reunion happened without her. She eventually returned to television in September 2021 with GAC Family's When Hope Calls, which became her first screen role after prison. Since then, she has continued working with Great American Family, the same network that also became home to Candace Cameron Bure. Her daughter, Olivia Jade, whose beauty influencer career collapsed under the weight of the scandal, later spoke publicly in December 2020. She acknowledged how obvious it was that her family's privilege had worked in her favor. Meanwhile, Rick Singer, the man who took the $500,000 and built the scheme around families like theirs, pleaded guilty and spent years cooperating with prosecutors before facing his own sentencing. Dave Coulier went through something that feels almost impossible to believe. In just 15 months, he faced 2 separate cancers, and the whole timeline still feels shocking. In November 2024, he thought he was dealing with a normal upper respiratory infection. Then he noticed swollen lymph nodes the size of golf balls. The scans raised alarm right away. A biopsy, done just before Thanksgiving, confirmed stage 3 non-Hodgkin lymphoma, an aggressive B-cell blood cancer. He began treatment and went through 6 rounds of R-CHOP chemotherapy. By around February 2025, that part was finished. In the spring, doctors said he was in remission. For a moment, it seemed like the worst was over. Then another turn came. During a routine PET scan, doctors noticed something unusual at the base of his tongue. Because of his recent history, they moved quickly. A robotic surgery was done to collect a biopsy. The result brought a second blow. He had 16 positive squamous cell carcinoma, an HPV-related cancer of the throat. What made it hit even harder was that it had nothing to do with the lymphoma. This was a separate cancer entirely. When he spoke about that moment on Today, his reaction was simple and raw. He said, "Are you kidding me?" There was at least one piece of good news. Doctors found it early, and that gave him a strong outlook. This type of cancer has a curability rate of about 90% when caught soon enough. He went through 35 radiation sessions and finished on December 31st, 2025. Even in the middle of something so serious, he found a little dark humor in that date. He entered the new year having completed radiation the day before. Coulier did not hide how hard radiation was. He said the side effects were completely different from chemotherapy. The treatment can take so much from a person, physically, emotionally, and mentally. Even so, he made a choice about how he wanted to face it. He said he would laugh his way through it and keep the people he loved close. Then, on February 4th, 2026, which was World Cancer Day, Coulier appeared on Good Morning America and shared the news that everyone hoped to hear. At 66, he told Robin Roberts that he was in remission with both cancers. He described the whole experience as a roller coaster. He also said early detection and that PET scan saved his life. And in the middle of all this, one story stood out in the most human way. During treatment, John Stamos flew to Michigan to visit him. When Stamos arrived, he was wearing a bald cap to show support. The moment Coulier saw him, he dropped to the floor laughing. He calls Stamos his brother, and that visit clearly meant a lot. Then the story got even stranger. While staying with them, Stamos caught COVID. So the two of them ended up sitting at opposite ends of a hallway, both in their 60s, talking through walkie-talkies. Coulier later called it very mature. He has spoken with deep gratitude about his wife, Melissa, and the way she stood by him. He has also started using his story to help others. He said he never wanted to be the poster boy for cancer, but now he knows he can urge people to get screened. Even in remission, he admitted, cancer never fully leaves your mind. It stays there in the rearview mirror. Jodie Sweetin. Jodie Sweetin's real life was far more painful than most people ever knew, and the truth behind her childhood still surprises people. She was born on January 19, 1982, in Los Angeles. While she was still an infant, both of her parents were sent to prison. At 9 months old, she was adopted and raised as an only child by her uncle Sam Sweetin and his wife Janice. Her biological father later died in a prison riot. For years, she said she was told not to talk publicly about the adoption because of fear over how people might judge her. Then came Full House. She was cast when she was only 5 years old. By the time the show ended, she was 13. Losing the series meant losing the thing that had shaped so much of how she saw herself. Her first drink came at 14, and the moment happened at Candace Cameron's wedding in 1996. A waiter served red wine without checking anyone's age. Sweetin kept drinking, glass after glass, until she got sick. That moment became the start of a much longer struggle. Over the next 13 years, she used ecstasy, methamphetamine, and crack cocaine. When she explained why it began, the answer was painfully plain. She said she was bored. That was only part of it. What makes her story so striking is the life she managed to hide while everything was falling apart. In 2002, when she was 20, she married Sean Holgan, a Los Angeles police officer. Candace Cameron served as her matron of honor. At the same time, Sweetin was using meth throughout the marriage. She was lying to a police officer about why she could not sleep and why she had lost 30 pounds. Looking back, she said the amount of lying and covering up was insane. Then came a moment that almost feels unreal. In 2004, the Full House cast took her to the premiere of Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen's film New York Minute. While surrounded by the people who had known her since childhood, Sweetin went into the bathroom, used meth, and then walked the red carpet high. In her memoir, Unsweetened, she wrote that she was getting away with it. What makes the memory land even harder is the line that followed. She wrote, "I didn't even look strung out." Eventually, people close to her saw enough to step in. Her castmates, reportedly including the Olsen twins, John Stamos and Bob Saget, helped stage an intervention. She went to Promises in Malibu for 6 weeks, then spent 6 months in a sober living home. Still, recovery did not happen in a straight line. She relapsed. Then she relapsed again. One of the most painful moments in her memoir captures just how deep the split had become between her public image and private reality. While speaking at Marquette University, she stood at the podium in the middle of coming down from a 2-day binge of meth, cocaine, and ecstasy. She gave a speech about how wonderful life had become now that she was sober. In the middle of it, she began to cry. The audience thought she was overwhelmed by memories of her past. In truth, she was crying because every sentence she was saying was a lie. She finally got sober for good in December 2008, aside from one brief relapse in 2013 during her separation from Morty Coyle. After that, she did something very few people expect from a former child star with a history like hers. She became a credentialed drug and alcohol counselor and worked at a rehab center in Los Angeles. By then, the damage across her personal life had already been heavy. She divorced Sean Holgan in 2006. Then she married film transportation coordinator Cody Herpin in Las Vegas on July 14, 2007. They had a daughter together. She filed for separation in November 2008, the same month she got sober, and the divorce was finalized in April 2010. In 2010, she had a second daughter with Morty Coyle. She married him in Beverly Hills in March 2012, separated in June 2013, and finalized the divorce in September 2016. All of this happened before she turned 35. 3 marriages, 3 divorces, 2 daughters, years, a long fight with addiction, and much of the public still did not fully understand the truth because she had already gone on Good Morning America in 2006 and again in 2008 to say she had beaten her addiction, even though she was still using both times. That may be the detail that stays with people the longest. After her 2006 appearance on GMA, where she said she was sober, a friend who sometimes sold her drugs suddenly called. They spent time together and played cards. At some point, she mentioned that she had not done meth in a while. Soon enough, she had started using again. Today, at 44, Sweetin continues to act regularly. She co-hosts the Full House rewatch podcast How Rude, Tanneritos, with Andrea Barber, and she is also known for speaking openly about progressive causes. In 2025, she re-recorded Unsweetined as an audiobook and said it finally brought together her voice, her feelings, and her truth. Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen. Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen entered Full House before they could even talk. They were cast at 6 months old because labor laws meant one baby alone could not work the necessary hours. For 8 seasons, the two of them shared the role of Michelle Tanner. For a while, even the credits did not clearly tell viewers there were 2 children behind the part. By the time the show ended, they were 8 years old. From there, their path moved in a direction almost no one could have predicted. After Full House, they built one of the most successful careers any former child stars have ever had. They created a huge direct-to-video business, built a massive merchandise brand, and later stepped away from acting altogether. Then, they moved to New York and entered fashion seriously. Over time, they founded The Row and earned real respect in an industry that had every reason to treat them like a novelty. Instead, they became major names within it. Their net worth is often estimated at around $250 million each. Then came Fuller House, and with it, the question everyone wanted answered. When Netflix brought the cast back together and the whole TV family returned, viewers kept waiting to see whether the Olsen twins would join them. The pressure became public. At one point, a network executive even said they were close to coming back, but they never did. Mary-Kate and Ashley said no, and they stayed with that decision. Across all 5 seasons, Michelle Tanner was explained as being in New York, working in fashion. The series even turned their absence into a recurring joke, with characters looking straight into the camera. For people on the outside, that distance invited a lot of speculation. Jodie Sweetin, who had been close to them as a child, gave the most grounded explanation. She spent time in their room. They slept over at her house. They went horseback riding together. They went to Disneyland together. But when the show ended, they were only 8. Then life kept moving. They went to New York, got married, built a fashion empire, and everyone slowly drifted apart. There was no dramatic fallout in her telling, just time, distance, and lives that changed. Candace Cameron Bure. Candace Cameron Bure grew up on screen as DJ Tanner and later became one of the most visible evangelical Christian figures in American entertainment. Then, her public image became part of a conflict that spilled into the open and touched the Full House family itself. In April 2022, Bure left the Hallmark Channel and moved to Great American Family, a network that describes its programming around faith, family, and country. Later that year, in November 2022, the Wall Street Journal magazine asked whether the network would include same-sex couples as leads in its holiday films. Bure answered that Great American Family would keep traditional marriage at the core. The reaction was immediate and intense. Jojo Siwa, who had come out in 2021 and had also once called Bure the rudest celebrity she had ever met in a viral TikTok, responded publicly. She said she could not believe Bure would create films that excluded LGBTQ people and then speak about that choice in the press. She called it rude and hurtful to an entire community. Actress Hilary Burton also condemned her. GLAAD released a statement urging actors, advertisers, and platforms to think carefully about tying themselves to a network built around exclusion. Bure later answered on Instagram. She said it broke her heart that anyone thought she wanted to offend people. She described herself as a devoted Christian who has deep love and affection for all people. She also said she had told the interviewers something that did not make it into print, that people of many identities and backgrounds had contributed to the network and would continue to do so, both on screen and behind the scenes. She added that she had never wanted to preach through storytelling. 2 years later, she said she felt misunderstood. What turned turned this from a general celebrity controversy into a Full House story was Jodie Sweetin's public response. Sweetin made it clear where she stood. Under JoJo Siwa's post, she left a supportive comment. She also shared LGBTQ resources and voiced support for the Respect for Marriage Act. Even with that, the relationship between Bure and Sweetin did not collapse into a simple public feud. Bure had attended Sweetin's wedding that same summer. When Sweetin spoke about their connection, her tone was calm and thoughtful. She said this is who Bure is and what she believes. She also said that while they do not share those beliefs, she is not trying to change her. She can still hug her when they see each other. She still cares about her. She does not wish anything bad for her. She respects her as a person and respects her right to make her own choices. That may be the most surprising part of the whole story. Even in a public divide, there was still room for care. Andrea Barber. When Full House ended, Andrea Barber did something few people expected. She walked away from acting and stayed away for more than 20 years. Barber had joined the show in its third episode, and over time, Kimmy Gibbler became almost as essential to the series as the Tanner family themselves. Then Full House was abruptly canceled in 1995, and Barber simply moved on. When she later explained that choice, she did not tie it to some painful scandal or hidden bitterness. She said she had a great experience as a child actor. She loved performing. She just did not enjoy the business around it, so she chose a different path. She went to college, earned an English degree from Whittier College, and later completed a master's degree in women's studies at the University of York in England. Years later, she shared a harder part of the story. In her memoir, Barber revealed that she had struggled with anxiety since childhood, including while she was on Full House. Red carpets and interviews left her terrified. Sometimes she felt so overwhelmed that she became physically sick beforehand. She later said that at the time, she thought something was wrong with her. She believed she was simply failing in a way other people were not, and looking back on that now makes her sad. She has also written openly about her divorce and her experience with postpartum depression. Eventually, she returned to acting for Fuller House. She later played a principal on Nickelodeon's That Girl Lay Lay, and now co-hosts the Rewatch podcast with Jodie Sweetin. There is also one detail that says a lot about how warmly she still connects with fans. For 10 years, from 2011 through 2021, she ran an annual Kimmy Gibbler Halloween costume contest. She personally judged fan entries and mailed signed scripts to the winners. For someone known as the one who walked away, she still found her way back with real affection.